Hello again, this is Peter Svidler for Chess24, and I'm continuing to record highlights of the first 4 rounds of the Tata Steel Wijk aan Zee 2020, and this video will be dedicated to the highlighted game of round 3, which has been played by, as you see here, the Iranian sensation Alireza Firouzja with the white pieces against Vladislav Artemiev. As you can see on your screen, the record between these two youngsters has, up until that moment, has been very much in Artemiev's favor, although it has to be said that this was the first ever game Alireza got the white pieces against Artemiev. So I think he was reasonably eager to start on setting the record straight. So let's have a look what happened. Alireza played e4 as he does. Artemiev played c6. He does play other openings, but it seems like he prepared specifically the Caro for the Tata Steel, and he already played it in round 1 against Vichy. He got, I think, a suspicious position out of the opening, but managed then to hold it without any difficulty against Vichy, which proves how resilient he normally is, and also that the opening probably suits him quite well, because Vichy has a wealth of experience playing the Caro-Kann with both colors. d4, d5, e5, bishop f5. Here Vichy played knight f3, which is of course by far the main move in the position, but Alireza goes with h2, h4, which has been sort of a very, very solid second favorite move in this position, but nowhere near as popular as knight f3. And Black has a number of options here, main one being h5, which is what Artemiev played. But he can also play h6, which leads to all kinds of absolutely crazy positions. After g4, bishop sometimes goes back, sometimes it goes to e4 and then h7, and all of these positions are very, very messy and very sharp. But h5 is an attempt to restore some sanity. And now Alireza goes for sort of the old theory with c2, c4. I think there's been generally a shift in this position towards playing bishop d3, driven, I think, very largely in part, well, largely in part is not really great English, driven, I think, by Emil Sutovsky, among other people. But c4 is what people used to do, and even I played a couple of games starting from this position. e6, knight c3, knight e7. This is all very, very much mainline stuff. Knight g2. And here Artemiev plays knight d7, which appears to be a very, very normal move, but it's also possible to play sharper. And for instance, there is a lot of theory connected with the immediate capture on c4 here. White goes knight g3. And here, strong players, including, for instance, Vladimir Fedoseev once, have tried proving that you can just play b7, b5, and, the kind of a greed is good approach, which is often very, very principled in chess. It's not that easy to win this pawn back, because I think the position after a4, b4, knight c4, takes, and knight f5 is actually pretty decent for Black. This would happen in the game between Farukh Amanatov and Vladimir Fedoseev in 2014. Instead of a4, White, of course, can play many other things. In particular, bishop g5 appears logical. And we have an ungodly mess on our hands here after something like queen b6. Who knows what's going on? It's also possible to play a more containing game by playing bishop g6 here. White generally plays bishop g5, queen b6, and I myself had this position once on the board against Hikaru Nakamura and won after queen d2, and I wanted to show you a very short and a very brutal game that Jan Nepomniachtchi once won during the Russian clubs against Pavel Maletin. He took on c4, Black went knight d7, castles long. The threat now is knight takes e5, Jan goes rook e1, queen takes b2, knight g4, takes, knight takes e5, rook b1, queen takes d4. Black collected every single pawn he could collect, but unfortunately his queen side is on the verge of collapse, and after queen b3, rook d7, and a very, very cute little move, rook e d1, Pavel Maletin actually resigned here because his position is collapsing. In particular, a very cute variation here would be Queen c4, knight d6, rook d6, queen b7, and white just breaks through and delivers mate in the center. Knight d7 is very much mainline theory here. Knight g3, bishop g6, bishop g5. Bishop g5 is very, very logical, but noticeably there is, among the world elite, there is one player who is a very firm believer, or at least used to be a very firm believer in playing c takes d5 here. Maxim Vashkela-Graf played this at least 4 times in the past maybe 5 years, with varying success. He won a number of very, very nice games. But also lost a game to Nikita Vichagov in the Alekhine Memorial in 2013. And his idea was to go cd5 and after knight takes d5 simply to go bishop e2 and to play a more containing game, intending to play bishop g5 and then perhaps castle short. But bishop g5 is very, very logical, so let's proceed from here. Queen d6, and here the main move is actually queen d2, not the move that Alireza made. But Alireza made the move which I think is quite popular and appears to be cutting edge. And it has been played actually, among other people, by the aforementioned Emil Sutovsky. And this is the move rook c1. And here, it's not immediately obvious why it is that white completely ignores the threat to the pawn on b2. And actually, I would go as far as to say that, in particular, if you consider what kind of a position black is getting here, if he doesn't do it, he should actually take on b2. And there has been one very strong player who has done this. Alexander Donchenko actually played this in a Barcelona tournament this year against Miloš Pironovic. And he actually got a playable position after bishop d3, bishop takes d3. It's also possible in this position to go dc4, to which white actually replies by bishop g6, knight g6, and castles. And I wanted in particular to bring this up because this position happened in a game between two very, very promising young talents. Avonda Liang played this with black against Christopher Yu. And Christopher Yu is, in particular, I now am very painfully aware of the existence of Christopher Yu because he absolutely destroyed a puzzle-solving group I was in. But after bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, d takes c4, queen takes c4, knight b6, queen d3, knight e d5, castles and queen a3. I even think we had this position on the board during the live show with Jan. I tried clicking around here, and I've come to the conclusion that this probably is just fine for black if he is not scared to play positions which will require, obviously, precision and also some bravery, because it's not that easy to finish development here for black, let's put it like this. But I think if you're prepared enough here, you should be okay. Instead of all that, Artemiev played d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and knight f5. And somewhat surprisingly, this is also what happened in what we shall call a STEM game, which is a game between Emil Sutovsky and Maria Muzachuk in Gibraltar 2018. And white simply castles here. The tactical justification for it is twofold. If you take on d4 with a knight, you obviously lose material to queen a4. Well, maybe not material as such, but opening the g file and then allowing white to develop a lot of initiative along it, like in positions like this, for instance, appears to be extremely risky, to put it mildly. And if you take on d4 with the queen, white has this little tactic, which once again leads to positions nobody really would want to play with black. And after some thought, Artemiev ended up playing bishop g7. It's also notable that opening up the f-file here doesn't appear like something that black wants to be doing. If he could castle queenside here and hide the king on b8, he'd be perfectly fine, but it's pretty much impossible to smoke out this bishop on g5, and therefore castling queenside is more or less never on the menu for black. So Artemiev ends up playing bishop e7 here. knight f5, bishop f5, bishop e7, king e7, and queen d2. And we are actually still following the game between Sutovsky and Muzachuk, in which Maria played rook h d8, knight a4, queen c7, check, knight king f8, queen h5, king g8, and rook f d1. And white ended up simply being a very important pawn up in this middle game, and Emil converted this into a full point reasonably comfortably. Artemiev instead plays queen d8, hoping perhaps to, first of all, preparing knight b6 is very useful, and secondly, black obviously wants to kind of crawl towards some kind of safety on the king side, and attacking the queen on g5, if it ever lands on g5 with check, appears to be a smart idea. But Alireza meets it with a very, very nice maneuver I was quite impressed with. He goes knight d1 here, also indirectly protecting against the threat of knight takes e5, because now white has this check from before. Queen g5 also works then. Black plays knight b6, and the knight gets transferred over to e3, where it stands quite well, making it a lot less attractive, for instance, for black to take on c4, because it will then switch over to a fantastic position on d6, and also, of course, attacking the bishop on f5. And if the bishop goes somewhere, you can very much imagine Alireza being very interested in some kind of f4, f5 attacking possibilities. The computer for a while suggests playing g6, and then starts thinking that white has a very forceful reply to it in d4, d5, which was quite unexpected to me. The point being that after c takes d5, you kind of get mated from this side. So you have to take with the e-pawn, and then knight f5, gf, and bishop d3 just breaks the black position apart, and eventually the homelessness of the king on e7 will start playing an absolutely major role in the assessment. So the computer actually says white is close to winning here, which is why after d5 it suggests going king f8, allowing d6, perhaps picking up on h4, but it's not really all that happy about any of this either. Instead, Artemiev played king f8, knight f5, ef, bishop b3. And here, once again, very remarkably, machine thinks for a while and decides that the best option black has is something along the lines of rook h6, not queen takes h4, which is what Artemiev played, but rook h6. It feels that it's extremely important to try and stop at all costs the opening with files with a5, e6. And white can play something like queen f4, queen d7, bishop c2. I'm pretty sure this is why Artemiev decided not to do this, because basically you just lose the pawn on f5 for nothing. But the computer actually thinks that some kind of an endgame like this is black's best practical shot, even if I don't think you can realistically expect to hold it with black. But after queen takes h4, the evaluation really bottoms out very quickly. Rook f1, a very nice, precise introductory move. Rook h6, and now we go e6, fe, and bishop takes e6. All of this was played by Alireza quite quickly. And here, once again, the machine suggests it's more precise to go rook d8, rook c5, and play rook f6 here. But the position after takes, and takes, I mean, the evaluation never really improves. It's pretty much impossible to hold this against best play, just because of how hopelessly weak the king on f8 is. It's still better than what Artemiev played, though, because after the move he chose, rook e8, bishop b3 arguably is maybe even cleaner than what Alireza did, creating a tremendously strong threat of queen b4 check. And often when the knight gets to d5, maybe not in this immediate position, but let's say after takes, and knight d5, queen a5 is surprisingly crushing in positions like this, because everything starts falling apart. This knight is hanging, the pawn on a7 is hanging, you cannot possibly afford to allow queen d8 check, because it often will be mate. And despite currently being a pawn down, white in many of these positions, according to the machine, is just absolutely mathematically winning. But bishop f5 doesn't spoil anything. Once again, the suggestion is to play rook d6 here. But after that suggestion, after queen a5, the best the machine can offer black is some kind of a position like this, where, once again, not only are you a pawn down, but also the king on e8 is so poor compared to the king on g1, that I don't think anybody really expects to survive positions like this. But after rook takes e1, rook takes e1 and queen d8, queen d3, which is a very nice little move, threatening bishop g6, also queen f3, queen a3, all of these things are crushingly strong. And white is pretty much winning, and the game really should not have progressed much further than that. Artemiev tried stopping bishop g6, queen f3, queen f6, now queen b3 check, king f8, queen a3 check. There are other ways for white to convert this into a full point, but this is perfectly fine. Queen d6, queen e3, a nice little shuttle maneuver which forces the queen all the way back, and now we go queen e4. And now really stopping the bishop from landing on g6 by any kind of normal means is no longer possible, because you don't really want to allow something like this. It just looks too painful for words. So Artemiev played rook f6, bishop g6, king g8, and here perhaps the final somewhat difficult move of the game, queen h4, which Firouzja played instantly, using the pin on the f6 rook to make sure that there's a threat of rook e8 check, there's a threat of queen takes h5. Queen d5 is what Artemiev chose, check, rook f8. Now Firouzja correctly chose not to play bishop h7, because winning, though this position is, and it is completely winning for white, there is actually a cleaner solution. He played queen e7, knight d7 and bishop c2, creating a threat of bishop b3. If you take on a2, sort of stopping bishop b3, white obviously picks up on d7. So Artemiev played queen takes d4. And this is where you can maybe argue that there is a slight blemish in the game. And it also had a very, very interesting practical consequence. Here white could play queen e6 check, king h8, and a very cute little geometric idea, queen f5, protecting the pawn on f2, which was hanging with check, and also creating a threat of queen h7 mate. The only way here not to get mated immediately is to play g7, g6, but obviously nobody would continue playing in a position like this, and I think after queen f5 Artemiev would just resign and everybody would go home. Instead, Firouzja took on f8, gave a check, took on f8, queen takes b2, and the game continued, despite this position frankly being completely lost for black. Check, king h6, check, g5, queen d6, check, king g7. Somewhere here they passed the time control, bishop b3. Artemiev gave a check and went to f6. Firouzja correctly said, I don't believe this can ever be a problem to convert. Took on f6, king g3, b5, bishop d1, h4, king g4, c5, f4, gf, and king takes f4. I'm giving all of this without commentary because really, I mean, there are other moves to make, but none of them really change the assessment in any way, shape, or form. Black really needs more than two pawns on basically on their starting positions to hold against the bishop on two flanks. But something strange happened here. I think when this position appeared on the board, Artemiev had something like 50 minutes, maybe 40. I think maybe 50 is an overstatement, but definitely around 40. And he thought for, I think, 35 of them in this position, despite the only plan available to black really being pushing the pawn to a3 and then hoping that somehow c4, b4, and b3 happens without white stopping it. So really the only variation he had to calculate over and over again is something along the lines of a5, king g4, c4, king takes h4, a4, g4, a3, g5 check. Let's say king e5. It doesn't really matter where the king goes, because obviously if you try standing in front of the g pawn, white can even start moving with the king towards those pawns, because this is a correct pawn, this is a light square, so the bishop will always win with the a pawn. Not that we need to explain this. So you play something like king e5, white goes g6, king f6, king h5, and after b4, probably king h6 is also winning, but just to demonstrate how futile this entire thing is, white can just play bishop e2. If b3, we take on c4, b2, bishop d3, the pawns are stopped. And if you play c3, we play bishop d1, once again not blundering b3. And then white just wins with the g pawn. So for somebody of Artemiev's strength, and he is an extremely strong player, there can be no doubt about that, I think realizing that this position is completely lost must have taken him all of 3.5 minutes. And then he continued thinking for another half an hour, which we really couldn't quite puzzle out. It gave Jan and me an opportunity to talk about the current television meta and other things of great importance to all of us. But it was still slightly puzzling to see Artemiev burn all of his time and then make this sequence of moves, which really does not improve. I mean, it's exactly the same position. Alireza didn't have to play bishop e2 this early. But also you can even stop black from playing b4 by playing bishop e2, king f5, king h5, king e4, g6, c3, bishop d1. And this is where finally Artemiev decided that he is now so many tempi behind that it's time to throw in the towel. All in all, I think a very impressive victory by Alireza. Very forcefully played game from start to finish, with this one blemish which made it last an additional 2 hours. But I don't think he will mind very much, because the result in the eventual cross table stays the same. And all in all, a very, very good start to the tournament for the young Iranian, who after that game was actually in the sole lead of the tournament with 2.5 out of 3, having beaten Vladislav Kovalev in round 2, I think. That concludes my highlight video for round 3 of Tata Steel 2020. I hope you've enjoyed this video. This has been Peter Svidler for Chess24.